Welcome back to the channel, good friends. Brian from Apex Detail. We have a test hood here with one long, deep, wide scratch, a deep, thin scratch, narrow, and to the left of that we have a deep rock chip or a nick in the paint. We have this hood out with this type of damage because we are testing a rock chip and scratch fill-in kit. This is the Evercoat Body Shop Scratch, Low Spot, and Nick Fill-In Repair Kit. I also slid in a 2000 grit sheet of sandpaper because none of them ever seemed to have high enough grit for me to finish off and then polish out from there. Having this kit alone does not mean you have everything for complete rock chip and scratch repair on the finish of a vehicle. I also added touch-up you can pick up at any local parts store, or you can go to a body shop supply store and have them mix up exact match using the color code from your vehicle. What's included in the kit? Let me show you. We have 320, 180, and 80 grit sandpaper. We have packets of hardener. We have a squeegee. We have a panel prep. And we also have packets of the body filler as well. This little block here also meant to team up with the little sand strips, hook and loop, so you can use one, remove it, discard it, and move on to the next, quickly and easily. While I continue to show you the contents of the kit, not knowing if this is going to be something that would work for you, I will, throughout the video, point out and show you tips and tricks that will work for your rock chip and scratch repair. I have videos that do feature Dr. Color Chip, stone chip, and scratch repair using just OEM paint. This kit here is local, so I thought I would feature this as well for maybe another option. If it works, I'll let you know at the end of the video. And it's something you could pick up locally at AutoZone, any of your parts stores nearby. Don't throw the package away. The labeling on the outside also has instructions on the inside, and you can use the packaging to mix up your hardener and filler and save a little bit of a messy situation. I do want to point this out. On the touch-up pens you can pick up locally at parts stores and such, there is a white ceramic tip on one end, and that is meant to clean out the valley of a deep, large scratch or a rock chip. If it gets filled in with wax or sealant, you have to clean that out of there, and especially if it starts to rust in those areas. Another quick tip, you can use barbecue skewers or toothpicks. I soak them in a cleaner first or alcohol, and you can also use them to clean out the valley of a scratch or deep into a rock chip. From there, you want to use the prep wipe that they have included in the kit, and to stay on course, if you're using a different method, you still want to use some sort of isopropyl alcohol or a panel prep or panel wipe to clean out the areas as well. So we're not veering very far from just your standard fill-in, rock chip fill-in with OEM, or Dr. Color Chip has their own method as well. And I have covered that. You have to go back pretty far. I'll try to remember to supply a link, but that's another option. Okay, next, I'm going to use the lid of the container that it was packaged in and mix up the filler. And that's using the spot glaze and the hardener, mix it together with the little squeegee that is supplied. And you have a limited time to get it on the panel and in the valley of the rock chip or the scratch before it hardens and is unusable. Now, with just a limited time before this hardens up and is unusable, there are many ways to get it in the valley of the rock chip or the scratch. I'm showing you here one way that you can get it done. One thing of concern that I'm already seeing. Now, this is a darker panel if you're working on dark red, dark blue, black, dark green. This color of the filler here is a light blue, whitish, grayish color. And if you're working on darker colors, that may be of concern if the touch-up paint that you have is thinned out. And that is happening lately with the waterborne clears, or just the companies are getting cheaper and are really thinning out the touch-up pens. So you have to go buy more, of course. If they're not too thin, they either only last a few months by turning into string cheese or just hardening inside the container. But anyways, to get back on track, if your touch-up paint is thinned and you're using a lighter filler, that may show, and it may not turn out the way you think it will. A darker fill from a spot putty filler glaze that I'll show you at the end of the video may be the preferred choice. But let's continue on here and see how it turns out. On silver, champagne, white, lighter colors, yellow, this should work out fine. And of course, what I'm doing here is just cleaning the surrounding areas that I accidentally got some of the glaze on, and I'm using Citral 266. Now all we have to do is give this some time and let it set or let it harden. And each kit is going to have a different time table for you to wait. So just read the instructions and pay attention. Well, those triggers are fragile spot. Now, here is where we run into problem number 2. The little sand strips that they give are just way too aggressive. They are really only meant to level out low spots or dents, larger dents. This is nothing that you can feather trying to repair a little rock chip or a scratch, a thin scratch such as we're working on here on a test panel. So I just jumped to what I have, and that is 2000 grit, and I wrap that around a firm block. So the next step, as you can see, we're just smoothing things out with the sandpaper. You can do this dry or you can wet sand. I like to wet sand personally in my shop because it keeps everything controlled. It keeps from most of the dust particles from getting airborne. I personally sand until I see the white milky substance building up around the panel, and that's clear coat. So I've leveled things out and I'm now digging into the clear coat, and that's where I'll stop. And it feels rather smooth and impressive. What they need to come out with is a filler that hardens up like this, that is the exact match of your paint. Now, Dr. Color Chip is similar, but just not quite there. Time to do some actual touch-up now that things are level. If you don't level things up, guys, and I'm showing you some of the tools you can pick up on Amazon or maybe even locally to get this done. But if you don't level things out, it can take forever, because once you fill a little chip in, if you've ever tried it before, looks good, but if you walk away and come back, it has kind of wicked in or settled in, and there's still a dip or a valley there to be filled. And you can really go down the rabbit hole and start putting a ton of time into these projects. I like and use pretty much all the tools that have been shown, but my favorite is the fine line paint writer applicator pen here. So I'll dump in a few drops at a time. You don't want to dump the whole thing in there because the paint hardens up rather quickly. And you can also mix clear coat in with it to give it a nice shiny look and match the paint you're trying to touch up. And then using the pen writer, I dab it in there, sort of slow motion tattooing. You're not doing brush strokes, you're dabbing the paint into the valleys of the scratch or the paint chip. I test the viscosity or the thickness of the paint on the side of my little dish here before I get started, so I kind of know what I'm looking to expect from this particular OEM paint. They're all a little bit different. And then I get to work. And we're going to see what I was afraid of here is the filler just a little bit too light and will show through. And that's going to really put a damper on our paint chip and scratch repair party here. This part here is just having patience and taking your time, not being in a rush, and only filling the areas in between the gaps or where the paint ends, where it's chipped, where it's scratched. Take your time and do a good job. That'll make your next step a whole lot easier. Looking good so far, I have to admit, but as we sand and level things out, when that touch-up paint gets a bit too thin, my worries, concerns are that filler is going to show through. What I use, the glaze I use, is a dark red color, and you can actually even dye it and make it darker, and will not show through on the darker colors. So we'll see. So I'll switch tools. There are other ways to fill in with the paint. This is more like a little tiny Q-tip, and you can dab paint in with this tool as well on some of the wider scratches. Now you can hear the furry shop manager in the background. She thinks I'm milking the job, so I guess I better hurry up a little bit. Look. Watch him. So at this point, the touch-up paint being exposed to oxygen in the open air is starting to get a little sticky, starting to turn into string cheese. And it's time to get some paint thinner, wash that out, and get a couple more drops from the pen and continue on. So finally, 26 Stella Artois in, we finally have this paint chip and the 2 larger scratches filled in. And now it's just waiting time. Waiting for this to cure, and sometimes it could take up to 12 to 24 hours to harden up enough so it won't back out and pull out of the valley of the scratch or the nick while you're sanding and polishing. When it is finally hardened up, I'm going to show you an old-timer's trick. So you want to grab a razor blade and towards the edge of the blade wrap some masking tape around both sides like I am here. 2 trips around with tape. And we're going to use this to level off. You can start using the sanding block, but to speed things up, you can use the razor blade, which will quickly shave down the high spots. And this is by slightly raising the razor blade using the masking tape away from the surface and only really shaving the peaks of our filler touch-up paint. Another little tip or trick, take a number 2 pencil and the eraser side. We're going to use super glue and a hole puncher and sandpaper, and that hole puncher is the exact size of the tip of the eraser head. Punch out a little sliver of the sandpaper and super glue it to the eraser end, and you can quickly sand the area of a rock chip and just get a peak or a high spot without really sanding the clear coat in the surrounding area. For the scratches, I'm just going to switch over to the block. I'm going to tightly wrap the sanding sheet around the block, and while we're sanding, it's a nice firm block, so we're only sanding the peak of the touch-up and a little bit of the surrounding areas of clear coat. When you feel that if you're satisfied that it's smooth enough, and that's going to be subjective, you don't want to really sand too far, or again, you're going to reach the filler and you'll have to start all over again. So at some point, you're going to have to stop and switch over to a polisher and polish out the sand marks, which is a very easy thing to do. And once again, you can really go down the rabbit hole and start spending a lot of time into this. I'm not going to do an hour-and-a-half video on this, so I'm going to stop quickly without going too far and let you know if the kit itself will work for you. So I didn't have exact match touch-up because this is only a hood. There were no color codes or anything. I just had to kind of eye up what I had laying around. But if you had a lighter color and you had exact match by using the color code or mixing some up that's close to the color you're touching up, this would work. Other than that, I can show you what I use when it comes to a filler glaze that's for darker colors. So at this point, you can see everything's smoothed out and it's filled in, and you can go back and sand a little bit if you want to get even flatter. But if you had exact match and you were working on a lighter color, this kit can be something to keep in mind. And again, you can pick it up locally, AutoZones, and some other places. So this is what I would have preferred for this color, and with a perfect match touch-up paint, it would have turned it from a 6-footer into a 2-footer. So I hope that helps. The kit can be used in certain situations. This has been Brian from Apex Detail. Catch you in the next video.